When you stop and think about the U.S. military's presence around the world, have you ever wondered just how extensive it really is? It's probably, well, a lot bigger than most of us picture. So today, we're doing a deep dive into exactly that. U.S. military installations, both here in the States and all across the globe. We've got this incredibly detailed list to guide us. Our mission really is to unpack the sheer scale of it all, the geography, the different types of places these are, and maybe uncover some, surprising bits about their history and role today.
That's right. And this isn't just about throwing numbers at you, although there are quite a few numbers involved. It's more about understanding the actual infrastructure, the whole system that supports defense operations globally, how it's set up, why it's there, and what that tells us about strategy.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Before we get lost in the huge number of sites, maybe we should start with the basics. What exactly is a military installation in the eyes of the Department of Defense? Sounds simple, but I get the feeling the definition is kind of broad.
It really is, yeah. The official statutory definition calls it any base, camp, post, station, yard, center, or other activity that's under the control of the Secretary of the Military Department of the Secretary of Defense. But here's a key distinction. An installation, or maybe a few installations together, can act as a base. And the DoD defines a base specifically as a locality from which operations are projected or supported.
Ah, okay, so installation is the broader term, like the administrative thing, and a base is more about where the action happens, operationally speaking.
Exactly. It allows them to cover everything from, a huge training area to a tiny comm station.
That makes sense. It shows how they categorize so many different kinds of places under one umbrella. Right, here's where it gets really interesting for me, thinking about that global footprint, the numbers involved. They must be pretty immense, right?
They are. The U.S. military maintains hundreds of these installations all over the world. As of July 2024, the figure is at least 128 military bases located outside U.S. territory.
Wow, 128 overseas.
Yeah.
That's a lot more than I would have guessed, and I bet a lot of our listeners are surprised too. So out of all those, is there one that stands out as the biggest, the largest overseas base?
Uh-huh. That would be Camp Humphreys. It's in South Korea.
Okay.
According to the U.S. Army, it's the largest overseas base by area. It's basically like a small city, supports thousands of people. And if you look at where most of these foreign bases are clustered, you see them mainly in NATO countries, several Middle East nations, South Korea, naturally, and also Australia, Japan.
Right, the strategic hotspots.
Precisely. It's not random. It reflects alliances, potential conflict zones, trade routes. It's all about being able to respond quickly, Project Power.
And that global strategy really starts at home, doesn't it? We talk about the overseas reach, but the foundation is the domestic presence, which is also, well, vast. Maybe even more surprising for some folks.
Absolutely. Within the U.S. itself, everything's organized pretty meticulously. You've got installations grouped by branch Army, Marines, Navy, Air Force, the new Space Force, Coast Guard, and then they're broken down further by state or territory. It's a very structured way to manage it all.
Yeah, and looking through the list, you see states like California, Texas, Virginia, just packed with Army bases, big training grounds, logistics hubs. But it's not all just, serious operational stuff. The list also includes things like the MWR resorts, morale, welfare, and recreation, like Shades of Green down in Florida or the Hale Koa Hotel in Hawaii. Kind of shows the human side supporting the troops and families.
Right. And it's worth pointing out, the list does cover the major Army National Guard, the ARNG training sites, but it specifically leaves out the smaller local armory locations.
Ah, okay. Otherwise, the list would be even longer.
Much longer, yeah. Too granular for this kind of overview.
So shifting back overseas then, this is where you really see that global reach in action. Can you give us some examples, show the variety and why these places are important?
Sure. You have joint bases, shared facilities like Pine Gap in Australia, or the Naval Communications Station Harold D. Holt, also down under, critical for intel and comms. Then think about Iraq. As of 2021, there were roughly 2,500 U.S. personnel there, spread across places like Al-Assad Air Base, Camp Victory, supporting ongoing missions. Syria, too, though that's shifted. You still have U.S. forces, special ops at Al-Taf training rebels, some troops near oil fields, maybe 1,500 to 2,000 total, though there was that partial withdrawal. And it's crucial, for balance to mention that the Syrian government calls the U.S. presence illegal and without consent. That's their stated position.
More in context.
Then for specific branches, the Army has a huge presence in Germany, the Kaiserslautern community, Grafenwöhr for training,
Yeah.
Landstuhl Hospital, biggest U.S. hospital outside America, plus bases in Japan like Camp Sama and Camp Arif-Jan in Kuwait. Marines, big presence in Japan, especially Okinawa. MCA Tsushima, Camp Smedley D. Butler Complex, vital for readiness in the Pacific. Navy's got key spots too. Atsugi and Yokosuka in Japan, major hubs. Then there's Diego Garcia, that remote island in the Indian Ocean, very strategic.
Right.
And of course, Guantanamo Bay in Cuba and Camp Lemonnier in Djibouti, which is crucial for Africa and the Middle East ops. Air Force relies heavily on bases like Ramstein in Germany, Kadena in Japan, Incirlik in Turkey, Al Udeid in Qatar. Huge logistical and operational platform.
Wow. It covers so many regions.
It does. And even the Space Force is on the list now, with sites on Ascension Island, that's UK territory, and in Greenland, part of Denmark. Shows the move into space operations. Coast Guard, too. They have patrol forces, Southwest Asia and Bahrain, activities Far East in Japan, supporting maritime security.
Right.
What's really fascinating when you look at it all is just the sheer variety. Different countries, different roles, communication hubs, training grounds, logistical anchors, all supporting these complex global operations.
And this massive network, it didn't just spring up overnight, right? There's history here and ongoing debates that are constantly shaping it.
Oh, absolutely. A lot of this structure, its roots are deep in the Cold War. Bases, especially in places that weren't democracies, were often justified as vital, against the Soviet threat. What's interesting, maybe, is how many of those bases are still active long after the Cold War ended. It suggests, well, inertia plays a role. Once a base is there, it tends to stay.
Right. The justification might change, but the footprint remains.
Exactly. And there are sources and critics who assert that, historically, U.S. officials sometimes worked with regimes considered oppressive or anti-democratic to secure these basing rights. For example, the Democracy Index classifies many of the, I think it's 45 current non-democratic host countries as having authoritarian governments. So that's a perspective, a criticism that's part of the discussion around these bases. We're just reporting what the sources state here.
Understood. And domestically, things have changed too, haven't they? We've seen bases close, merge, that whole BRSP process, base realignment and closure.
Right. Multiple rounds of that since World War II, constantly reshaping the map inside the U.S.
And more recently, a different kind of change, the renaming push, driven by anti-racist activism, focusing on bases named after Confederate figures. There was that naming commission set up by Congress, and the actual renaming started in late 2022. Shows how societal values can impact even military infrastructure.
Yeah, if you connect all these dots, the Cold War legacy, the BRAC rounds, the renaming, it really paints a picture of something dynamic. This infrastructure isn't static. It adapts or is forced to adapt to geopolitics, new threats, and changing values back home.
It's a complex picture indeed. So let's bring it back to the listener. What does all this mean for you? Why is understanding this vast network important?
Well, I think it gives you a much deeper appreciation for the sheer scale of what the U.S. does globally. The defense operations, the alliances, it's not abstract, it's physical places. And knowing this helps you contextualize things you see in the news, international relations, military exercises, even local economies here in the U.S. near domestic bases.
Yeah, like next time you hear about tensions in the South China Sea, you can picture those bases in Japan or maybe Australia playing a role.
Exactly. It connects the dots between headlines and the actual tangible infrastructure that makes certain actions possible. It shapes diplomacy, it shapes responses, it impacts communities.
So this deep dive, it really pulls back the curtain on the intricate and constantly changing world of national security and global partnerships, all told through these locations. We've definitely covered a lot of ground today, from all those sites across the U.S. to this complex web of installations spanning the entire planet. It's quite something.
It truly is. And this overview just highlights how defense strategy and global engagement are always evolving. It's this continuous balancing act, presence, projection, adapting to a world that never stands still.
So maybe a final thought for you to take away. Think about how the location, the nature of these installations might keep shifting. What will future challenges, new technologies, different global hotspots mean for this map? Will we see more space bases, fewer ground troops in certain areas?
And maybe ask yourself, what stands out to you most about how these bases are spread out? And what questions does that raise for you about the future? About global security and America's role within it all?